Something completely devastating happened in Gqeberha, Eastern Cape, South Africa this past weekend. It's become a worldwide news headline. You may never have heard of Muhsin Hendricks, but many people in South Africa and the world have, and for many people he is, was, will remain an icon. He, by all accounts, was the first ever openly gay Imam in South Africa, and by many claims, the first openly gay Muslim Imam in the whole world. And as many people have seen in that awful video of the moment, he was mercilessly, brutally assassinated this weekend in the back of a car in Gqeberha. So we're going to try and unpack this now. I'm going to tell you what exactly happened this weekend. I'm going to tell you about Muhsin's extraordinary life. I'm going to reflect a little bit on rampant homophobia in society and of the role in religion in that I'm not a Muslim person nor a queer person. So then what I'm going to do is present you some ideas that I think are important and relevant, some perspectives that are relevant to understanding this horrific occurrence from leading, powerful Muslim intellects who I think are better placed than me to speak on this moment. This is The Issue with Dan Corder. South Africa is a movie. Welcome to the watch party. This is The Issue with the brutal assassination of Muhsin Hendricks. Quite a lot of the perspectives that I'm going to communicate to you from Muslim people, Muslim South Africans, come from the last few days as I've encountered them through the podcast that we have, Dan Corder in the Morning. It is a weekday morning, Monday to Friday, news worth knowing podcast that is completely free. You can get it on any of your favorite audio streamers. Just search Dan Corder in the Morning. We have a WhatsApp line 0607-613-436. We talk about the news and talk about South Africa as it unfolds together. A lot of what I'm about to say comes from there, so join us. So Muhsin Hendricks, South African man, became an imam. He became a religious leader. And then in the 90s, he came out as gay. He, in a quote from a documentary about his life called The Radical a few years ago, he essentially said that he felt a greater compulsion need to live authentically than he felt a fear of death. And so he decided to come out to the world. He was immediately kicked out of a mosque that he was working at. He was forced to leave some other religious institutions that he was involved in. And then for the last longer than 2 decades, it was the 90s when this happened. For the last longer than 2 decades, Muhsin Hendricks has continued his work as a faith leader and created spaces that are safe, solaceful shelters from the storm for queer people, people of a most traditionally understood sexual identity, who also have relationships with Allah, who are also Muslim, who are trying to understand their sexual identity in relation to their relationship with their God and their faith. Muhsin Hendricks became famous for this liberation theology of a relationship with God. And beyond queer people, he also created safe and welcoming spaces, often religious spaces, for all kinds of marginalized people, including people like refugees, people including the down and out from whatever social circumstances they were fleeing. And he was also part of spaces that were trying to reimagine Islam as having a different kind of gender relationship between men and women. Unfortunately, ever since he came out in the 90s, Muhsin Hendricks has also been hated and loathed and experienced death threats on his life from extremely homophobic members of the Muslim community in South Africa and around the world. And that's what he was referring to when he said that quote along the lines of, "I felt a greater need and compulsion to live authentically than I felt a fear of death," in that documentary. And then this past weekend, Muhsin Hendricks traveled to Gqeberha, and different reports claim different things. Initially, there were some reports claiming that he was going to preside over a gay Muslim wedding. Then there were reports claiming that he was just going to attend a wedding of queer people in Gqeberha. Then later in the week, there have been reports that he was going to preside over an interfaith wedding. The long and the short of it is, he never arrived at that wedding. And in a widely circulated kind of security camera footage video, you see he's in the back of a car that somebody else is driving, and the car is blocked off by another car. 2 men get out. One of them walks directly to the back window where Muhsin is sitting and fires multiple shots through the window, killing him. Nothing is stolen. The car is not taken. The men just leave. They don't go and attack the driver either. And it's pretty clear by all police reports and investigations so far that it was a targeted assassination. In the days since Muhsin's murder, many significant Islamic institutions have come out and condemned the killing and have condemned the people, because there are some people who have been celebrating Muhsin's death, celebrating whoever it was that killed him on WhatsApp groups and on Facebook. And some prominent Muslim scholars and institutions and faith leaders have condemned those celebrations. Now, I am not Muslim, I'm not queer, I'm not best placed to speak on this. But in the last few days on the podcast, as I mentioned earlier, and through reading and absorbing public statements from different prominent Muslims who are trying to make sense of this, I have come to understand a few things from Muslims who believe that Muhsin Hendricks should not have been killed and that whoever did this is cowardly and absolutely in the wrong, having committed an evil. The first point that many Muslim people have made is that it is not their place, it is not an individual Muslim's place to be the judge, to be the judger of people, and to be, in this literal case, the executioner, but the executioner of judgment on behalf of God, Allah. That it is Allah who will judge, and these Muslims are saying that it is absolutely unacceptable that somebody, or these two men and whoever else was behind the killing, would take it upon themselves, almost arrogant and self-righteous and delusional, to believe that they understand what Allah really wants and they will be Allah's kind of like executioners in the real world. It's just not the true essence or heart of Islam. And that's interesting because it's very resonant and similar with the other Abrahamic faiths. If you didn't know, Judaism into Christianity into Islam is a single tradition of belief unfolding in the Middle East over thousands of years. And so these Abrahamic faiths, all coming from the original kind of idea of Abraham as the source of many of these tribes of Israel and other kind of religious and ethnic groups, cultural groups. These Abrahamic faiths share quite a few beliefs. And in Christianity, you also find, and I can speak on this, in Christianity, you also find this idea that God will be the judge, and it is up to God to judge and to act. It's not up to humans to be the judges for God. And there's another idea that exists in Christianity that Muslims have expressed in the last few days around Muhsin Hendricks, which is that God sees many sins equally with the equal kind of severity, that they are not necessarily worse sins than others. There are not sins worthy of greater punishment than others. And so for somebody to be punished, persecuted, and killed for being homosexual is just not a reflection of the actual beliefs around the religion of how God sees the world. In fact, many Muslims on the podcast and in public life have said that there are many sins that Allah looks upon with great disapproval, and that there are no Muslims in South Africa or around the world going around finding people who've committed those sins and trying to kill them or persecute them the way that homosexual people, gay people are persecuted. And so many of these Muslims have recognized the specific quality of this being awful homophobia amongst these people, as it exists in quite a lot of religious communities around the world that are influenced by hyper-misogynistic, patriarchal, heteronormative cultures. There have been many impactful, powerful dedications, tributes, considerations of Muhsin Hendricks' life, his extraordinary life in the last few days. I'm sure you've come across some of them. I want to highlight and end this video with one specifically from the Center for Contemporary Islam in a letter co-written by Prof. Sadia Sheikh and Associate Prof. Fatima Siedat. They're co-directors for the Center for Contemporary Islam through the University of Cape Town. Because I think that their statement, more than any other that I've read, teases out the complexities and the awfulness and the tragic loss, but also the great life of Muhsin Hendricks. I'm going to share key parts of the statement. I'd encourage you to go and find the full thing and read it for yourself. I'm also going to try not to butcher the Arabic. So the statement starts with a quote from the Quran saying, "Indeed to Allah we belong, and indeed to Allah we return." And then it reads, "We are reeling from the targeted assassination of Imam Muhsin Hendricks, the first openly queer Imam in South Africa. Imam Muhsin was a pioneer in the rights of queer Muslims, having previously led the Inner Circle and more recently the Al-Ghurba Foundation. He was recognized as a global leader who created a space to reconcile Islam, faith, and sexual diversity, and provided a refuge for young queer Muslims who had been rejected in their homes. Muhsin courageously tracked a path of religious inclusivity and a vision of Islam as a home for all. We are also reeling from the ways in which some Muslims are condoning his assassination on social media. The compounded horror of such violence and brutality has brought into sharp focus the intense homophobia permeating the Muslim and other faith communities. This is a time for each of us as individuals, as well as in our collectives, whether in mosques, in community organizations, and our Palestinian solidarity formations, to deeply reflect on the ways in which our work for justice must be all-inclusive and the right to dignity is unconditional." The Prophet Muhammad was sent as the Rahmatal Alamin, a mercy to all worlds, everywhere, in all times. Every human being deserves justice and dignity. Imam Muhsin has completed his work on this earth. It is for us to begin ours. Let us have the difficult conversations. Let us grow seeds of love, justice, and compassion. Let us truly engage what it might be to follow the sunnah of the mercy to the worlds. And then it ends with this. We salute your courage, Shaheed Imam Muhsin. May your soul be embraced in love and compassion by Allah. Dear contented soul, return to your Lord. May your Lord be pleased with you. May you be pleased with your Lord. That's a Quranic quote. May the work of justice, love, and inclusivity that you worked so hard towards be realized. May we grow our communities in the work of justice, love, and all-inclusive dignity. Thank you for watching.